the name of our template. So we pass a string. What is the name of our template? That is index.html, right? Now, before going any further, let's go back to the browser and refresh this page. So instead of hello world, we see this products heading. This is the result of an h1 tag. And with ul and li tags, we see these bullet points over here. Beautiful. Now, finally, we need to replace item 1, item 2, and item 3 with the list of our products. So back to our view function. As the third argument to the render function, we need to pass the list of products that we loaded from the database. So here we need to pass a dictionary. In this dictionary, we're going to add one key value pair. We're going to call the key products, but we could call it anything. It doesn't really matter. The value for that key should be the products object that we define on line 7. So here in our dictionary, let's add this key products, colon, and the value should be this products object. So let me break up what we have on line 8 over multiple lines so you can see it clearly. We're calling the render function with 3 arguments: the request object, the name of our template, and a dictionary that contains the data to be passed to this template. And finally, we're going to go to this template, index.html, and replace these items with our products. That is very easy. So just after the UL tag, I want you to type out a curly brace, followed by a %, a space, a % one more time, and a closing brace. This is what we call a template tag in Django. So in between these markers, we can write dynamic code. For example, we can add loops to repeat some instructions or write if statements to conditionally render some content. So here we want to write a for loop for product in products. So earlier in our view function, we passed these products here using a dictionary. Back to the view function, look, as the third argument to the render function, we passed this dictionary. This dictionary is called the context. So it provides data to be used in our templates. In this case, we have a property called products, and that is the reason we can access it here. So we are looping over these products. Now for each product, we want to render a list item. So let's indent this item here and replace item 1 with the name of the product. So here we want to dynamically render the name attribute of this product object. To do that, we use double curly braces. So open 2 curly braces and close them. And in between them, type out product.name. So whenever we use double curly braces in a Django template, Django will evaluate the expression that we put here and render it in HTML. Now, the last step is to end this for block, because Django, unlike Python, doesn't rely on indentation to determine the scope of a block. So right after this for loop, once again, we add curly braces, a %, and type out end for. And then we close it here. Now, we no longer need these items here, so let's delete them. Now back to the browser, let's refresh our page. So instead of item 1 to 3, we see the name of the products stored in our database. Now let's take this to the next level by displaying the price of each product right next to it. So back to our template, this is where we're rendering the name of the product. After the curly braces, let's add parentheses. Now inside of the parentheses, we want to dynamically render the price of each product. So once again, we use the double curly brace syntax to render some value dynamically. That is the value of product.price, like this. Now back here, let's refresh the page. Now we can see the price of each product right here. Beautiful. We could also prefix that with a $sign. So before the curly braces, we add a $sign. And then when we refresh the page, we see the actual dollar value. So this is what I want you to take away in this tutorial. In Django templates, we have 2 special syntaxes. One is a curly brace and a %. This is called a template tag, and we use this to dynamically execute logic. So in between these template tags, we can write for loops to repeat some code, or we can use if statements to dynamically render content. The other syntax we have is the double curly brace syntax, and we use this to dynamically render values in our HTML markup. So whatever we put in between them, will get evaluated and written to the HTML markup. Now, this page is pretty boring so far. In the next tutorial, I will show you how to convert these bullet points into beautiful cards. Over the next few tutorials, we're going to replace this boring list of bullet points with a beautiful modern card like this. So on the top, we're going to display the image for each product. Below that, we're going to display the title or the name of the product, as well as the price and potentially a button to add that product to a shopping cart. Now, to present something like this, we're going to use a framework called Bootstrap. It's a very popular framework for building modern and responsive applications. So head over to getbootstrap.com. On the home page, you should see something like this, and then go to the documentation. On this page, you can see how you can add this Bootstrap framework to your web applications. So if you scroll down, here you should see a starter template. So here we have some basic HTML markup. We want to bring all this HTML markup and store it in a template called base.html. So over here, you should see this copy button. Click that to copy this. Then back to PyCharm. In the project panel, inside of the templates folder, let's add a new HTML file. So a new file, we call this base.html. Now, with Command and V on Mac or Control and V on Windows, paste all this markup that we copied from Bootstrap website. Now, here on line 13, we have the body tag, and this is the container for what the user sees in a given web page. Now, in this example, we have an h1 tag for displaying a Hello World title. We want to replace this with something dynamic. So for each page in our application, we want to render something different. For example, when the user goes to the products page, over here, instead of this h1 tag, we want to render what we defined in index.html here. Okay, so back to base.html, let's delete this h1 tag. Once again, we're going to use a template tag. So curly brace, %, curly brace. Now, the template tag we're going to use is called block. And with this, we can define a block or a hole in this document. So we're going to create a block called content. We could call it anything, but here we're defining the content area of our website. So that's why we call this block content. Now, after this, once again, we need to add another template tag, and this is called end block. Now we should go to index.html. On the top, we should tell Django that we want to extend this base template, which means we're going to use all the markup defined here. And this gives our applications a modern look and feel. So back to index.html. Once again, we're going to use another template tag. This one is called extends. So extends. What are we extending? The template defined in base.html. So here we add a string base.html. Now we want to fill the block or the hole that we defined in base.html with these few lines. So once again, we add a template tag, block. What is the block that we're filling? That is the content block, right? And we close it here. So now all this markup is going to go in the content block. Now finally, we need to close this block. So after the last line, let's add another template tag and block. Now to make this code cleaner, I would prefer to select these few lines that belong to the content block and indent them like this. This is not required, but it just makes our code easier to read. So with these changes that we made in this tutorial, when Django tries to render this page, first it will look at base.html. So it will take all the markup defined in that file, and then it's going to fill this content block with the markup we have defined here. Now, if we go back to our browser and refresh this page, we're going to see something a little bit better. So refresh. You can see the fonts are changed and there is a little bit more space in between the bullet points. Now we're ready to replace each bullet point with a Bootstrap card. And that's what I'm going to show you next. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to display these beautiful cards on our products page. Now note that this page is responsive. So if you view it on a small mobile device, we're going to have one card on each row, like this. And if you view this on a bigger screen, we're going to have more columns or more cards on each row. So let me show you how to build this. First, head over to getbootstrap.com, click on the documentation. Here on the left side, you can see a link called Components. On this page, you can see all the components that are defined in Bootstrap. These are the components that we can add to our web pages to make them beautiful and modern. So the component that we're going to use is called a card. Over here, you can see an example of a card. And right below that, you can see the markup that we need to use to render something like this. So let me resize the screen. Okay. On the top right corner, we have this button. Copy this markup. Now back to index.html. Instead of rendering a UL and a bunch of LIs, we want to render a bunch of divs. Because with UL and LI, we'll get bullet points, but we don't want to display bullet points here. So right below the h1 tag, type out div.row and then press tab. So this creates a div with the class row. Now in this row, we want to repeat multiple columns. So type out div.col, as in short for column, and then press tab. So we use these divs to create a layout like this. We have multiple columns in a row. Okay. Now inside of a column, we want to render a card. So now we should paste the markup for rendering a Bootstrap card. So paste that here. Now you can see our code looks a little bit ugly because it's not indented properly. So on the top, go to the code menu. Here we have this item, reformat code. And look at the shortcut that is associated with this command. So let's click that. Now our code is beautifully formatted and it's easier to read and modify. So we have a row. Inside this row, we have a column. And inside this column, we have a card. Now we're going to take our for loop and put it above this column. So for each product, we want to render a column. So scroll down and grab this line of code, cut it, and then paste it right above this column. Now we should close this for loop.